Hello and welcome to Edinburgh Business Stories. EBS is hosted by myself, Alex Richards of Umore, a video production studio based in Edinburgh and Bristol, and Alan Smith of Action Coach, providing business coaching throughout Edinburgh and the Lothians. If you aren't already, remember to subscribe, and I hope you enjoy this upcoming episode of Edinburgh Business Stories. Scott, thanks so much for joining us today. So give us a snapshot of who you are and what your business does.
I own Compass Roofing Limited. I have been in the industry since I was 16, left school, told by my dad I had to get a job, got an apprenticeship as a roof slater and tiler, went to college for 4 years, finished that in 89, left there, went to a couple of other companies, and then back in the day there was a lot of people that were, it was called 714 back in the day, which was obviously the kind of first route into self-employment, where you actually went and worked for another company. They didn't pay your holiday pay, but they paid you an enhanced rate, and everything was kind of price work and things like that. So you were out there, you had your own tools, your own transport and things like that. And then, you know, at the end of the year, you got a kind of tax rebate. That was a big benefit of being 714 sort of thing. But you didn't get any holiday pay and things like that. So it wasn't that great. But then after I'd done that, I found that, you know, I was getting inquiries, can you do this job, can you do that job? And I was a member of a bowling club which had a quite a big membership, so there was always like plenty of wee bits and pieces going about. So it kind of started for me buying a van with a ladder, didn't have a roof rack, it was kind of just strapped onto the top of it till I could afford the roof rack and things like that. And then I took a guy on to give me a hand, because as I say, it's not a trade that you can really do yourself. Even back in the days, you can't really do it safely back. You know, you need a hand to do it. So, so we were working with big companies. George Hancock back in the day, there was like big companies who were building companies but didn't have roofers, so they would take us on to do the roof inside there.
Great. So you've been building that for a few years. So where are you at just now? Roughly?
So at the moment, we're a limited company. We've got 22 of our staff, very small office staff. So I've got an estimator, I've got a contracts manager, I've got myself, I've got my office manager, Kelly, who's my sister. She keeps us right on most things. She tells us what we're doing in the morning, and keeps us right. And then we've got slaters, we've got apprentices, we've got single ply roofers, flat roofers, and we've got a couple of lead workers. Did have a joiner till a couple of years ago when he retired. And that's basically where we are at the moment. I mean, mostly in the domestic market, but we do subcontracted work for probably the bigger building companies, HM Rate, Prime Property Ventures. We've done a lot of work for Sundial Properties back in the day, Lawrence Mackintosh. So we get a lot of inquiries, word of mouth ourselves. We didn't really advertise. We've not got a marketing budget and things like that. We didn't really do any of that. Got all the vans are liveried and such, but most of it comes as word of mouth. I would say.
Amazing. So take us back. You kind of touched a little bit on kind of your journey into it, but give us a few more details. Tell us about your apprenticeship. What was that like back in those days?
I left school. I was a Christmas leaver, and I went home and I says to my mum and dad at the tea table, "Listen, I'm not going back to school after Christmas." And my dad didn't even break stride. He just kind of says, "Well, better get yourself a job then." You know, because I get up from my work in the morning, so you're not going to be lying in your bed. So so what happened was that I stayed in Albion Road, and then just round the corner there was a roofing company called Cullen Hogg. So basically I got the old school trousers on, the shirt and tie, and I went round and sort of says to the guy, you know, I'm looking for an apprenticeship. All right, come back at 4 o'clock. Right, okay. Came back at 4 o'clock, and Bobby Cullen, Alan Hogg, that was the two partners, two owners, they were standing, you know. So, you want to be a roofer? I says, oh, I think so. Why do you want to be a roofer? So a couple of my uncles were roofers. And he basically says, right, where do you stay? What team do you support? And then I must have said the right answer, but one of them was a Hibs supporter and one of them was a Hearts supporter. But you start on the I think it was a Monday after the Christmas holidays.
Is that right?
I started my work. I think I was always going to be in the trades, and I was always going to be a roofer. But I had two uncles who had their own businesses, and I was going to be starting my route into roofing was going to be through one of them, but one of my uncles had a bad fall, and couldn't work after that. So that kind of put the kibosh on that. So I started as an apprentice roofer with I was actually speaking about this the other day there with the black donkey jacket, and genuinely back in sort of like 1984, it was still the black hobnail boots, really cut into your ankles and things like that.
Do you know what a donkey jacket is? No, I knew
Yeah. So a donkey jacket is a really jaggy jacket with a kind of a PV back on it that was like over your shoulders. It was waterproof and it had like pockets, and it was like you would have to like look at them running at the dockyards and the coal mines back in the day, and they had donkey jackets. But back in the day we didn't have like liveried clothing and things like that. You got two after you were there a couple of weeks. You got two pairs of overalls. Right, and you put one in the locker, and that was the one that was to be washed, and they would do all the washing. They must have the company coming in to wash them, and then you would wear the other one for a week, and then you would swap them over, and the clean one would be there, and that was liveried clothing and workwear back in the day, and then I think did they supply boots? I can't remember. It was great. It was a great company to work for because they gave you a bus pass and things like that. It was good. It was really, really good. I mean, I couldn't thank these two guys enough, because the way that they'd done it back in the day was they had a couple of bricklayers, they had the guys that were doing the Harlan, the wet trades, the cement work and things like that. They had flat roofers, and then had slaters, and they gave us a wee bit of time with each of them. So you learn a broad range of skills. And there was a couple of laddies there that kind of messed about, and then there was a couple of laddies there that really stuck in, and that was one of the ones that, I was the one that was wanting to learn. I didn't want to be just standing over somebody's shoulder all day. I was more than happy to learn and try, and, because I'm thinking to myself, if I learn that and I can take it outside, somebody might pay me 20 quid to go and stick a slate in for them or something like that. Yeah. So, by the time my third year came, I was working at weekends, doing homers and pulling a couple of the tradesmen into do them to give me a hand and things like that.
And Scott, just I can't help but notice there that this is in your early days, you were keen to learn. What was your reason for being a Christmas leaver at school? Because did you not... I
was 16 in January. I was 16 in November, and that's when I wanted to leave school. School wasn't for me.
So I'm just kind of keen to...
School wasn't for me.
Yeah.
I just didn't like school. Yeah. I'm not going to say I was thick, but I mean, I was probably thick. No, I was. Listen, I left before my exams, my CSEs and things like that. So I left school with no qualifications. I just. But as I say, I mean, I think everybody's got something in them that that they'll be good at. And my thing was that I just didn't want to be standing about. And roofing's no rocket science. You just have to apply yourself and learn the techniques and things like that. And it's pretty easy once you know how.
And I think that was my point in asking the question was more around the idea of actually, we'll come on, I'm sure, talk about apprenticeships and the kind of your business right now. But it is that idea that sometimes, people like to learn in very different ways to the traditional way around the classrooms. And that's maybe, getting into a different environment is where kind of it really stimulates your learning.
I mean, I really believe that the hands-on, if you can give somebody, a bit, if you can tell them and show them how to do it, they'll be slower, and it'll maybe take them a bit of time for it to kind of sink in. But once it's sunk in, they didn't forget it. It's like riding a bike. Once you get to grips with what you're doing, just practice makes perfect, and the speed comes eventually as well. And it's not a hard trade to learn. It really isn't. It's quite a you know, it's quite an easy thing to learn, roofing. It's no, but you have to obviously apply it yourself, and you have to make sure that you're doing it right. But it's no a hard trade to learn. It really isn't.
So tell us about being an apprentice back then. What was it like?
Oh, I think, as I say, you know, back in the day, it was very, very different. You know, you get a clipper in the ear if you were cheeky. You know, you really would. And then if you went home and told your dad, and you had told your dad why you got a clipper in the ear, you probably got another one for your dad for doing that in the first place. But it was really different back then. I mean, it was like, you know, we were sitting in like common stairs, and people, the big thing was make sure you've got like you know, your donkey jacket under your backside, because you get piles if you sit on cold concrete and that. Like, pile. And then you were travelling in vans, and you know, my guys have got welfare units and things like that now, and everybody's got a seat and a seatbelt. I mean, but you were travelling in the back of a van with the cement mixer and the still saw there. You crashed the van, you were dead. You know? But you rolled at the yard in the morning. It was 6 going to a job, and there was 3 seats in the van. You were in the back. It was as simple as that. You just had to get yourself a seat. You know, you were just crammed in, kind of pushing the door shut. But back in the day, it was a real. There was tradesmen there that probably didn't like the younger ones, and there was other tradesmen there that were really, really good. I mean, I had my tradesman, kind of my main tradesman was a guy called John Coughlin, who actually ended up coming to work for us as an estimator. He's retired now, but John was big into football. We were big into, you know, a few of the lads were big into, you know, watching football back then. He was a junior football player, and he managed a few clubs. He managed St Mirren, Easterland, Berwick Rangers, Stenhousemuir. But back in the day, John was one of these guys that he was just good with a guy. He was good with the kids. He was really good. I mean, he was only maybe, I don't know, John would have been, you know, sort of 7 or 8 years older than us. So he was good. He was, and he took time with you. You know, whereas the other older guys were maybe a wee bit longer, you know. So the younger guys there was other guys there that were they were good and they wanted you to learn. And the thing is, see, for them, they realised that if we learned, it was less for them to do as well, and got done quicker, and you know. And it started right at the bottom. It started about, like, you know, cleaning up. That was it. It was all about housekeeping to start with. Clean the van out, go and do this, go and get a pail of water, go and, you know, whatever it was. And then it was you know, moving on for that. It was like the first thing that you kind of learned was how to mix like mortar properly, you know, because if you came up and it was and the guy went like that and it was dripping off the trowel, it was unusable, you know. So you had to learn just the very, very basics, and then cleaning the tools at the end of the day, that was your job. Whereas now, you know, everybody's got their own tools, and I tell everybody you're responsible for your own tools. But back in the day, the laddie would clean the tools, and Christ almighty, if you left one of the guy's tools somewhere and it wasn't there in the morning, where is it? You were to blame. So you made sure that everything was done right, because you would get a crack round the lug if you didn't, like, you know. But as I said, there was a few guys. There was another guy. They used to call him Hot Lips. What was his name again? Brian Sutherland. He was a flat roofer. So when we were on the flat roofing and that, he was a great guy as well. Like, you know, he took time and he showed you, and he was really, really good at his job. And when you looked at him, and I mean, he was like, nothing was done, like everything was done by the book. He was meticulous. He was meticulously clean, and you know, he was a flat roofer, so it was a dirty job. But he went home clean at night because he just done it really, really well. And when he done a flat roof, the flat roof was absolutely brilliant the way he done it, like, you know. And you learnt a bit for him, and then you learnt when you were on the wet trades, there was a guy called Brian Gill, and Brian was just really good at that as well. But it was kind of a really hard upbringing with that, a hard time in the trade, because it was a really, really physical job, and these guys were fast, because when they put cement on the wall and they're going to dash it, they have to dash it quick, or the cement will dry and the stones will just bounce off. So yeah, it was all about timing with that and things like that. And then you had like really, really good labourers back back in the day that had like shiny shovels because they took care of their tools back in the day. But nowadays, you know,
Do you think the standards have dropped in that regard?
standards have dropped. We do things really, really differently now. I mean, I'm looking at, there's jobs that we done back in the day. You wouldn't do them that way anymore. You would have to do it. You'd be safer doing it. Like, as in, like, back in the day, you got a bit of rope and you were on a tenement roof and you climbed out the hatch, you got onto the ridge, and the tradesman would say, oh, there's a slate in the road, go down and get it. There's a rope. And you would literally wrap it round your leg. And he would feed you down, and then you would pull yourself back up on the rope. Now the guys got full body harnesses and will not send them down the rope unless there's an anchor point and things like that.
Yeah.
But I mean, back in the day, listen, nothing ever happened to anybody back in the day. It was amazing. But I mean, if you're walking down a roof, in a tenement roof, and a slate comes out below you, and that slate goes, you're away.
Yeah.
You know, and you're only falling off one of these roofs once. That's it. But it just didn't happen. But as I say, it was you know, you were a wee bit more. I think the bravery was maybe, you know, it was, Kenny roofers, any problem going down on a rope and that. But no, Christ almighty, nowadays I wouldn't let my own boy do it. So I wouldn't expect anybody else to do it. And we've probably got 60 jobs on our books now, and I would say that probably 40 of them will have scaffolding on them. You know, because health and safety is a big thing, and I certainly didn't want to end up in jail because I've not put the job, I've not put the guys out to a job to do it safely, and I'm telling them get that done. I tell all the lads, listen, you're your own safety officer at the end of the day, and if you're not sure about doing that job, you come back to me and see how we could do it safer, or you know. So even ladders these days, is, you know, it's all right for short term, you know, like short duration work. But if you're going to be working off a ladder all day, you know, you stand on a ladder and it's not secured at the top, it's quite dangerous. So scaffold's the way to go. And then you just pass that on to the client. That's what it is.
Yeah, it has to be safe though.
We just want the guys to be going home safe at night and make sure that they're coming out in the morning.
What does it really take to grow a business in Scotland today? This episode of Edinburgh Business Stories is brought to you by Henderson Logie, chartered accountants and business advisors, who help owner-managed businesses grow, from those first steps as an entrepreneur through to a happy retirement. Based right here in Scotland, Henderson Logie knows what it takes to succeed locally. And through their membership of Prime Global, they help clients thrive internationally too. Their purpose? Helping their people, clients, and communities unlock their full potential, building legacies, creating wealth for local communities, and opening doors to future success. To learn more, get in touch with the Edinburgh team at Henderson Logie today. So you finished up your apprentice. So what, do you get offered a job then, or what?
No, so I finished up my apprenticeship in the July. So we used to shut down for Trades Fortnight, and I had no idea that this was coming. But we were standing in the pub just along the road at Middleton's, and that's where you used to go. Trades Fortnight, you know, everybody used to have it was all, you would sell the scrap, and you would go there with all the money, and the boys would get their bonuses and things like that, because you shut down for the trades. And Alan Hogg took me aside and says to me, he says, I need a word with you. So I'm like, okay. He says, you're paid off. You've got a, he says, if you didn't get a job within the next 2 weeks, come back to us and speak to us. He says, but you need to leave here now. And I was devastated. I was like, oh, I love it here. But I realised now that he was actually doing us a big favour, because we needed to go. You need to go away. He says, you'll always be one of the laddies here. You'll never be a tradesman. He says, because these guys will always treat you as one of the apprentices. You'll always be an apprentice. And then I went away and I worked for a company called Kellico, and then Thorburns after that, short times, maybe a year, and then I moved into 714. My dad was a machineman with a company called George Hancock and Son, and that was back in the sort of like the early 90s. That's when all the kind of tenement repairs were getting done. But these big companies didn't really have multi-trades. So they were like building companies. So they would perhaps do all the building side of the chimneys and the pointing, but they would subcontract the roofing side in. So if they didn't have a company that they would bring in, they would basically bring 2 or 3 lads in that would do the roofing side of it, and they would just get paid. It was almost like being employed by them. You got paid every week. You got an enhanced rate because you weren't on the books. You weren't getting the same benefits as the people on the books, as in like holiday pay and things like that. And it was a price as well. So you weren't just going there and doing your day's work. You were actually grafting to make, if it was a square metre price, you were obviously putting in as many square metres as you could because, you get paid that at the end of the week.
Scott, just a question out of curiosity here. So building companies, why would a building company build so much of the house, but then want a roofer to come in and do the roof? Why wouldn't they do that?
It wouldn't be building these houses.
Okay.
It would be renovations to the old kind of Edinburgh housing stock, like the old tenement repairs and things like that. So they perhaps had some of the bigger companies would have roofing companies, that they would enlist to do these jobs, but other companies would just sub it out with 714 guys. It was probably cheaper for them, and their margin would have been better.
So then you get on to starting Compass as it is today.
Compass kind of started almost by accident. I was working with a guy at Kellico, and him and I were working just at the weekends and things like that. And I had an old, I see to you about a van back in the day. It wasn't a van. It was an estate car, and the ladder was strapped to the top of it. You genuinely had to leave the windows open to strap the ladder on, But back in the day, it was, and then you were doing any amount of jobs, and then it got right. Okay, we need to get a van, and then we got one van turned into 2 vans, and then all of a sudden you're spending thousands on Yellow Pages. You're putting in the builders section of Yellow Pages, you're putting in the roofing section, you're then putting in roofing supplies, you're putting a wee ad in that, and Yellow Pages back in the day was just an absolute fortune. It really was. It was. To think the amount of money that I must have spent on that yellow book.
Do you reckon it worked for you though?
It must have. Listen, didn't get me wrong. We were never ones for saying, where did you get our name for? We didn't do that. But if it come for the Yellow Pages, then that was great. There was no websites back in the day that you were. The Yellow Pages was where you got your work, either that or word of mouth. Most of it was word of mouth, and what most of it for us today is word of mouth. Word of mouth.
Yeah, amazing. So you set up, you and kind of a mate, doing odd bits and bobs. What year is this?
Probably. I met Carol in 1990, so it was probably after that. I got married in sort of like 93. I was working for myself back in 93. So I always had the wee business cards, Compass Roofing, back for as soon as I was on the 714. It was always Compass Roofing because that was the name that we kind of thought of. And then that's just stuck. And then
Where did the name come from?
No idea. No idea.
I find that ironic when it's a compass.
Genuinely, I think it was just we were sitting there one lunchtime at Compass Roofing. But back in the day, that it was so it had to be. It was never going to be, Zulu Roofing, because that was right at the end of the phone book. So what we used to do with the Yellow Pages is we actually genuinely registered. We had to get a letter for our accountant. Sorry, for the bank that. When we started up a bank account in the name of Compass Roofing, we put 4 full stops in front of it, Compass Roofing, and that got you before A in the Yellow Pages.
Clever.
Really?
Because but then everybody cottoned on it.
They got 10, 11.
Exactly. But that was it back in the day, and you had to, the salesman come out for the Yellow Pages, and he was like, "No, you have to show us. You have to, you have to show us documentation of that." So we're away up the bank and get the bank. There's a checkbook with ... You were before somebody that was called, Alan Smith Roofing. You were before them now. But I got you first in the phone book. But I don't know if that worked. But it certainly got you there.
Yeah. So you had the name for from the beginning. At what point would you say the business became a business rather than just you and a couple of mates doing some homes?
I don't know. So we worked for George Hancock. Then we were doing like a lot of work for like smaller builders. And then I met Cass, who was my business partner. So we had done a job. There was myself and another guy had done a job on this specific tile. It was called a Cambrian back in the day, and Cass was working with another guy called Bill Cunningham, and him and Bill got a Tesco's to do down in North Berwick, and they got these tiles delivered, and they're looking at them and thinking, no idea how to fit them. But we had fitted them on one job. We weren't the best at it, but they went back to the merchants, and the merchant says, Scott Miller's, they've used them already. Can you come on board and show us how to use them and work again, self-employed? So that's how I met Cass. And we done the Tesco's, and then Cass and I started working mates together at weekends and at nights and things like that. And then all of a sudden, Cass, we took the plunge. Cass left. It was myself and Cass, and then Compass Roofing really started. And then we were working our way around smaller builders, doing their roofs. And then it's just built up for there. And then, as I say, the word of mouth thing. And you were obviously getting stuff out of Yellow Pages, and you were sponsoring bowling tournaments and things like that. So your name was getting out there. It was, you were kind of spreading your wings a bit. Then you got the van was coming along with a livery on it. And see if you do a good job, your name gets passed in. Somebody just needs to have need a roofer. And once somebody needs a roofer, if you've done work for somebody, they'll say to you, get Scott Miller, and then that just kind of snowballs for there, if you like.
Do you remember what it was like to come off the tools?
So that was a wee bit further down the line. Again, I mean, we were working, Christ almighty, Cass and I were working to 7 days, 8 and 9 at night. I mean, when my son came along, I was taking him to the football, dropping them off at the football, going home, picking Lewis up, going to the football, dropping him off. He was playing for Hutchie Vale, and then I was going and pricing jobs and things like that. But coming off the tools properly, I realised that had to happen, and that was when we probably started taking staff on, and one roofer and 2 roofers. You needed 2 roofers in a van. So one roofer worked with Cass back at the time, and I was out pricing jobs. And we were actually talking about the other night there, me and my wife, with my daughter and that. We were talking about when I had a garage at my house, and it was a typewriter. We had a typewriter to do the estimates. That's how we used to do them, and put a stamp on them, lick the stamp and send it away. But back in the day, it was like the typewriter with a film, and so as you got the 2 pages, so as you got a copy for yourself. There was no computers back in the day. So so we started doing that. I would say maybe, I don't know, probably 2000-ish when we started taking staff on. Mm-hmm. I think we went limited in, was it, I don't know, 2003 or something like that. But we just kind of kept picking up work. It was,
And what's your approach for getting people into the team then? I mean, how do you...
It's really difficult. It's really difficult,
mm-hmm.
because, I would rather, the guys that we've got now are good. I would rather take on apprentices and try and mould them into,
mm-hmm.
Our way of working than, we've taken guys on before. Some are good, some are not so good. I like taking young people on and giving them the chance to learn for the people that we've got, the good ones that we've got.
And again, what's your approach with apprentices?
So apprentices, back in the day when I went into the trade, it was, I left school and then I went straight to college through the CITB with Cullen Hogg. We do it really differently now because I think that the kids that are coming in, they maybe didn't want to be at school in the first place. So mm-hmm. they're looking to get jobs in a trade. And then to put them back into the classroom probably isn't where they're going to be. So the CITB are only getting a 60%, success rate, for start to finish an apprenticeship, because a lot of lads just leave, they just can't handle it. So what we do is we try and, Cass would say that we try and get them through a winter, and that's a big thing as well.
Yeah,
when it's freezing cold, it's peeing in rain, and you're soaking wet. If you've been out on an emergency or something like that, sitting in a wet van and things like that. So we take them and we give them a bit of knowledge in that first year, and we send them the second year to college. And by the time they go to college, they've actually got quite a good, bit of learning that they can take into the college. So, and as I say, one of my lads has just won the Apprentice of the Year at the college, and that's his first year at college. So he's obviously been with us for coming up 2 years now, but he's still in his first year as his apprenticeship. So we didn't send them straight to. We need to know as well that they're keen and they're wanting to actually do it. Because as I say, after, if we enroll them at the college, and then it's no for them, that's that college year done, because you can't go in halfway through, sort of thing.
And Scott, you kind of touched on it before we kind of got on camera here, but your approach with the apprentice with regards to the family as well, or the parents.
I like to meet the parents, parent or guardian. We get grandmothers phoning up and saying, "Have you got any apprenticeships?"
Really?
Apprenticeships? Well, not for yourself, obviously. No, it's for my grandson, and I'm thinking, well, why is your grandson no phoning up? Why is your grandson no phoning up? I mean, I took my daughter round like a lot of hairdressing places for an apprenticeship, and I didn't go in and ask for an apprenticeship. I sat outside and let her go in, and she come out one day and she, I've got one. It was a Saturday girl at the time. It wasn't an apprenticeship, and then that moved on to an apprenticeship. But we like to meet the parents, because if the parents are workers, and you kind of get a feel for who the parents are and what the parents are like as well. And we've had a couple. There's a young lad who owns his own business, Lee McKenzie, and I was out one night at must have been a function or something. I can't remember. It was a birthday party or something. And I met his mum and dad, and his mum says, "Oh, my laddie's not got a job," and I says, "Oh, bring him in." So brings him in, and Lee's sitting there. Would you like to start? Aye, right, we'll start, and that. So I was in on the Sunday night, just getting ready for the Monday, and I knew Lee's mum and dad, because I'd obviously been at the function with them. Lee's starting on the Monday, and I walked up the lane at the yard, and here's Lee's mum's car there. So Lee's mum and dad have actually brought him down to show him, to remind them where the yard is, and you go there on the Monday morning, so it's like he's no going in, he's no, where am I going? He's, so they took a bit of time with him, and Lee had a wee blip halfway through his apprenticeship, or maybe a wee bit further into his apprenticeship, and his mum phoned me, "What's happening?" And I tell his mum, he's just. He's just not behaving himself. "Oh, just leave that with me." And next minute, boom, he's come back. He's a new man. His mum's giving him a hard time, and that's what you want. That's I would do the same with my own. Because if I'm saying to, if I'm saying to somebody, "Listen, you're not doing that the right way, or you're not behaving the right way, or you're not conducting yourself in the right manner," I'm not telling lies with that.
And Scott, how normal is that then for other people like you to kind of speak to parents?
To parents, I speak to. No, I'm not. I didn't speak to lots of parents, but I speak to. There's certain ones that you keep in touch with.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a.
Sorry, maybe my question is badly worded. Actually, what I was meaning is the other owners of roofing companies, for example, do they have that same approach in terms of speaking to the parents, or is that just a you thing?
Probably just a me thing. I mean, it's just something that I like to do. If you meet the parents, you get to, get a feel for the family and see what kind of family environment they live in, and they're going to come to their work clean and tidy with a piece, and they're going to be on time. If the mum and dad works, they're going to work. If the mum and dad perhaps doesn't work, then well, You know, so if you get a feel for that, then I think if you can get a feel for the family, and even listen, at the end of the day, if you keep in touch with them and they get a wee bit of feedback on their child's progress, then it's great. It's great. Good. It's good.
You've probably worked on some incredible properties across Edinburgh. Are there any kind of fun stories from amazing properties you've worked on?
We've worked on some. We've worked on billionaires' houses, and we've worked in royalties' houses as well. We've just done Burncastle Lodge for the Duke and Duchess of Northumberland. That was quite a funny story, right enough, because the Duke and Duchess of Northumberland, the Duke wasn't there, so the Duke was, I think, Charles's best man at his wedding. Maybe it was his first one. I don't know if it was his second one. But we went down to see this job, and it was for Sir Robert McAlpine back in the day. And we went down to price it with my surveyor. We've got an external surveyor. And we went down to price it, and all there was like 4 walls and like bullet holes and paint all over this. It looked like a wee lodge house, right? And we were like, oh, so what are we got? So all they were going to do was keep one wall up, but it was actually just before William got married, and that was where his stag do was. And they went paintballing, and that was they basically just wrecked the place because it was going to be getting pulled down. So Burncastle Lodge, just down at Lauder, and I'll always remember it because we were down there, and it was like 6 foot of snow. It was it was like the end of March, and it was like the snow, and you actually had to, because it was down in a kind of valley, if you like. When the snow came in, you had to get out because you wouldn't have got out. The vans and such wouldn't have got up the hill. But I always remember coming to the end of the job, and the Duchess was there. So the Duke and Duchess of Northumberland have got Alnwick Castle, right? So they were going to be passing over Alnwick Castle to their son, and then they were moving into Burncastle Lodge. So it's a spectacular property. I mean, I think the development was 3.3 million, and then they moved their massive art collection, and it would obviously trump that by tenfold. But I'll always remember the Duchess standing there, and she was standing there with the site agent, and I was there, and it was like the site meeting, and they had these 2 dogs, right? And the dog came and done a massive shit. And the smell, and we're all standing there, and we're all looking at each other, and the Duchess she just didn't bat an eyelid, and I'm thinking, how long have we got to stand here? And then we kind of, do you want to walk? We'll walk up. So we kind of took a wee walk, and that was quite good. So we worked on Edinburgh Castle. We were up at Stirling Castle a few weeks ago. Nothing's came of that yet. But we've worked on some really, but see the good properties to work on. The good properties to work on is, any tenement building, because they're all fantastic properties, and they need a bit of TLC. We've done turrets at people's houses. We've done architectural lead work at people's houses, but just the standard heritage stuff like, proper OG cast iron gutterings, lead work, Scotch slating, just all that stuff. That's the stuff that we really like to kind of get our teeth into. That's the better jobs for us, I think.
Can you tell us about? I've got a couple of anecdotes that you've maybe shared with us about someone sleeping at the bottom of a ladder. What was that all about?
Oh, that was we had the first ever apprentice we had was a lad called Mark Lynch, who's got his own roofing company now as well, and he gets a phone call. Oh, you have to get up here. There's been an accident. So gets up there. We weren't that far away. So he gets up there, and he sees the ambulance sitting and says, "Oh, thank Christ Almighty, there's been an accident." So one of the other lads is away at the shop. Mark's lying at the bottom of the ladder, but he's up by the time we get there. He's been lying at the bottom of the ladder. The woman's phoned, thinks he's fell off the ladder. He's sleeping. It's dinner time. He's lying there like that, sleeping. I'm saying, what happened there? He's I was just sleeping at the bottom of the ladder, and the woman phoned, and the ambulance came, and I never fell off the ladder, Scott. And I'm like, all right, okay then, Mark. But we had a few. Listen, I could tell you some stories about apprentices. God Almighty. I mean, Mark again. I stayed in Northfield at the time, and Cass and I we're in the house, and I says to Mark, there's a garden shed along there for one of my neighbours. Go and prime the roof, put black primer on the roof, and then we're going to put felt on it. And 5 minutes later, the woman comes along and says, "Oh, Scott, you better come along the road." And Mark's sitting there with his head in his hand. "Scott's going to kill me. Scott's going to kill me." And I'm saying, what's? And I walks round the corner. He's covered head to toe in primer. The guy's just had turf laid. There's primer all over the grass. And I'm looking and I'm thinking, what happened? The ladder slipped in it. And he's got all the way down one side of his face, and Cassie's looking, and he's just looking at me, and I'm looking at him, and I'm thinking, oh, what have we got to do with him? But thankfully he wasn't hurt, so it was all right. Mary's pride, it was hurt, but we've had some. We had this guy. We were working at Willow Brae Bowling Club, and it was actually for a neighbour who was the president of the bowling club, and he says to us, he says, "Can you come along and price a flat roof?" So, no problem, come on. And we had this guy. I'll not say who he is, but we had this guy working for us, and we're coming to the end of the job, and they had these two big lions, right? Two big lions, and they were lying down with their paws out in front of them, kind of looking, one's looking one way and one's looking the other, so they were kind of handed, if you like. And I guess, I goes up, and he's putting all this stuff. I says, "What's that?" And he says, the guy that's working for us, he says, "That's the lions." I says, "What do you mean that's the lions?" He's putting them in a skip. I'm thinking, and they're on bits. He says, I moved one and it halved in two. He says, so I just smashed it up. I said, smashed it up? The president's going to go mental. So we had because we only had one lion, he's thrown one in the skip. Oh, I was going to wring his neck. But he's thrown one in the skip, and I'm thinking, if it came apart, you should have just left it like that, and then we could have either got it put back together again, or at least said to them, "Look, this is what's happened when we've moved these lions." So Cass and I are away up buying these Henry, you can Google it, Henry lions. They've got a big shield, and they've got one hand on the shield. Away up to St Andrews in a wee green van. We went up there, we had to buy two of them. It took all the profit out of the job. Then we had to try and get them up on the roof, and we've got this scissor lift thing that it's like a bicycle, and to lift them up on the roof. And then Cass and I just looked at each other at the end of it and thought, crying out loud. We bought the lions. The van was coming back down the road for St Andrews, where we bought them like that. We've got two of them in the back of the van. We sheets over them and that. But it was madness back in the day. But listen, there's loads of stories like that. Guy, Cass leaving the keys in the van, and somebody jumping in the van and stealing the van, and that. So I could write a book with some of the stories that But I was actually speaking to him about coming here the other day there, and some of the stories that he told me, I couldn't obviously repeat on camera, but listen, it's been an eventful sort of like 30 odd years.
And maybe kind of, as you're quite very experienced in your trade, and you're now the chairman of the NRF.
Chairman of the NFRC, National Federation of Roofing Contractors.
So just tell me about this though. When they talked about business plans and KPIs, give us your thoughts on that. Right
over my head. I'm like, my business plan is, and I keep saying that to them. My business plan is: I get up in the morning, I clean my teeth, I have my shower, I jump in the car, I go to my work, and I just face what's in front of me. That's it. That's my business plan. And if I can get through that day and make sure I come out the next day, that's me. Listen, I know my numbers within the business, but we didn't have marketing budgets. We didn't have, we buy our vans. We didn't have to finance our vans. We only get a van when we can afford to get a van and things like that. We just have to make sure that we turn over more than we're actually laying out. That's my business plan, and I think it's quite simple.
And what's your KPIs then? Because I think you said
listen, it's probably our KPIs now is probably getting more young people to come into roofing. That's our big thing.
Well, I think you had said it like this, which is your KPIs to get everyone home safe.
And get everyone home safe
and make more than we spend. I think I like that, the simplicity of that actually.
And it is. I mean, at the end of the day, listen, I certainly didn't want to be phoning anyone and saying, listen, somebody fell off a ladder. Because my uncle fell off a ladder years ago. And he's passed away now, my Uncle John. And he obviously, back in the day, it would be early 80s, very early 80s. And, he never worked again. And he was he was in he was just never the same again. He couldn't walk, couldn't talk, couldn't communicate, and it was really, really sad. So, everybody says hard hats. Would the hard hat have saved him? Possibly if it had stayed in his head, if he had a chin strap on. But that wasn't a thing back in the day. When I served my time, I got a donkey jacket and a pair of boots. We didn't get a hard hat. That was. Hard hats came, or either that hard hats were for building sites and big companies. We weren't doing that. We were kind of repair and maintenance and things like that. And health and safety wasn't a thing back then. Apart from the boots, that would be the health and safety thing. It's just crazy back in the day. Crazy.
Scott, we ask all our guests, what is your guiding principle in business?
I think just to be honest with the clients. I mean, we walk away for jobs. I mean, we if we go to a tenement and there's 10 owners and she's sitting there with 6 prices, we'll say, wait a minute, there's no point in me pricing this because I'm going to see it different. For every roofer's going to see it just slightly different. So you're not going to be able to compare apples with apples. What you're going to be able to do is you're going to get a price for me, and there's going to be things in that price that I'm adding in and they've no added in. So get a surveyor on board, get him to prepare a document, and everybody should then price that one document, because the surveyor should be able to go up and say what needs to be done, short term, medium term and long term repairs, and get that price that way. That's that. So being honest with the client. Mistakes happen all the time, right? Accidents happen. It's how you put these right. If you didn't make money on that job because you've had to buy Mrs. Smith a carpet, Lee, he had a transformer and he put it on the women's carpet at the top of the stair, and it must have been in the yard or in the van. It had a tiny spot of tar on the bottom of it, put it on the women's carpet, and because the transformer heated up, I had to buy the woman the top landing carpet, and that kind of took the profit out of the job. But she got her carpet back. It's not her fault that I done that, and it's no Lee's fault. It's an accident. These things happen. So my thing is always to make sure that you treat your clients properly. The roofing industry is full of rogues. So step aside for that and make sure that you're doing the job right. You're giving people value for money, and just make sure that you leave the client that she's happy, or that they are happy with the stuff that you've done. And see if you do that, you'll probably get the next door neighbour's roof today, and then the next again one. And we've actually done that. We Cass and I will say to each other, this street's been quite kind to us, because we'll drive up a street, and we're working on a job in Ann Street now, and we've done, this is the 3rd one in a line that we've done. You know what I'm saying? So eventually, somebody will need something done, and if they see that we've done a good job and they bump into their neighbour and they've done a good job for us, that's that's as I say, we didn't advertise. We've got an optimised website. We pay 200. Our marketing budget's £200 a month. That's all we do. That's all we've got like a couple of pictures. This is Lewis's thing. We've got a couple of pictures on the back of vans. Our vans are liveried. The guys go a bit with the liveried clothing and things like that. But in reality, we didn't have an advertising budget. That's about it. We just
do a good job.
Aye, we do it well, and then and just make sure that the client's happy at the end of the day.
Yeah. Scott, thank you so much for coming on, sharing your story, and we wish you all the luck in the future.
No bother. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me. Cheers.